going to make some tooling for our fly press to help us with this design here. This is going to be at Troy, Ohio in the summer. And this is a Three Sisters garden. If you're not familiar with that, look that up. It's pretty cool. It's what the Native Americans would grow. And we have some corn stalks, some beans, and some pumpkins, or some squash. I'm going to work on the corn stalks first because they're the tallest element and probably the most complicated. And so today I'm going to make some tooling to help me forge the corn stalk shape, the actual shape of the stalk itself. And so we're gonna work on that. And we're gonna take this big bolt and we're going to measure the center of this and we're going to cut it off, and this is going to give us two ends that we can put up into our fly press, and we can weld on whatever kind of working end we want. But this is the first step. You got to have something to put up into your fly press. Now my bolts I bought at Tractor Supply, they're 1 inch by 6 inches, or might be 6.5. I can't remember exactly. And they're inch fat, and I got the nuts and washers too. But this section here is about 3 inches, so we're going to cut it right in half and leave us 1.5 inches on each side, and that's the working end. The only caution I do tell you is this bolt does not run up in here in a 90, a true 90. It's a rounded, and that makes this very edge here, which is what we wanted when we got the bolt, stick into my fly press. So we have solved that by putting this washer on once we cut it off, and then the fly press itself will actually push on the washer, and the washer is up high enough, thick enough to not worry about that little shoulder. But I will caution you on that. You don't want to jam something up in your fly press that you got to work to get out of. So, got our bolt locked down in our chop saw here. We're just going to chop saw that deal. What we have, I made 2 of these. Cut 2 bolts in half. I'm going to dry them off because I cooled them off in the water. I just showed you I was chamfering the edge of that. Where you cut it, it's rough a little bit, and I don't want this thing to get stuck in my fly press, so I'm going to do everything I can do to make it come in and out easy and not hang up. Here's our pieces. And so basically this end, you put the washer on it. I may just leave the washer separate so I don't have to buy so many washers, but I may, if it's a tool I figure I'm going to use all the time, I'll just put a little tack of weld. If you weld on that washer too much, it's going to warp it, and I want it to be good and flat, but I may just put a little spot of weld on 2 sides to keep the washer with the tool. On these ones with the heads especially. The ones with the nuts, the nut doesn't have that same problem. So once you screw the nut on here, it's square to it. It's 90 degrees, so it doesn't have that problem. So you can put just this part in the fly press and not bother anything. But to give it a little more area to push on, you could put 1 or even 2 of these big thick washers on there. That would help it spread the weight out on what you're pushing on. But this is all I'm going to do for that. This is the first step. These tools I'm going to put on the longest things, and that way I can add triangles here to make it stiffer. The first tool I'm going to work on for our corn stalk is going to be this. I'm going to weld this onto one of these like that, and then I'm going to put little triangles here to brace this so this doesn't rack on us. And what that's going to do is, a corn stalk is not perfectly round like a piece of pipe. I'm going to use pipe initially for my corn stalks, but I want one side of that pipe to be crushed in. Get a hold of a corn stalk and look at it. It's more of a shape like this, you know, cross section. It's more of a shape that's kind of got a dish in it, and then like that. Kind of looks like that. I'm probably not going to go for that corners like that. I'll probably try to just do if I can get it to do something, crush down a little bit, I think that will suit me. But the actual corn stalk has fairly sharp corners when it's done this way. But if I can just get it to do that much, I'll be happy. I've placed my bolt with the nut on it in the vise, and I have actually taken the pipe wrench and tightened it up, and I'm putting the pipe wrench on the threads because I don't care if the threads are any good. Usually that's what you want to protect, but in our case, we don't care what that is. We want to protect the slick part. That's what goes in our fly press. Since I'm going to be attaching a round piece to this, I want to notch this down a little bit so that this fits down around the round some. Some people will have a fancy sander that'll do that for them, or something like that, but I don't have that handy. And we want this to be sitting in here straight this way, so we've got to work on that a little bit. But we're just going to take our grinders and we're just going to notch it down just a little bit so that we can get a good penetrating weld all the way around this. I've also cleaned up this side with some sandpaper, this whole piece here, got the mill scale off of it, and we've sanded on our bolt just ever so slightly. That's looking a lot straighter. I think we can work with that much. I think we can work with that much. So now we're going to set up our welder. Alright, got this one welded up. It's just a round bar, probably about an inch, round solid stock, welded all the way around the bolt. Got our nut tightened down on this bolt as hard as it'll go, and haven't chewed up this part. That's the part I want. And then I took the last few minutes. This was a piece of bar that looked like that, and I just cut it in half and then cut the ends of it off, and I had to knock the corners of my triangle off to make it fit down in this. I'm missing this weld in the top of this nut a little bit, and then I'm going to weld these on like that. Just going to tack them and then weld them on hard, and we'll trim off this corner when we get all that done. And these little gussets are for strength. When you're pushing down out here on the end, it's going to want to flex and bend. And so we're going to add these in for strength, and we're going to weld them up good and hard. I'm going to heat this up again I'm gonna tack the welds on it and I'll heat it up with the torch some, and then we'll weld it in here hard. I'm gonna show y'all what I was doing. Stuck my bolt up in there and tightened it up. And this is the short end of the bolt, the head of the bolt, I guess. And also I had this, the head of the bolt has some lettering on it, which makes it not flat. So I sanded that off with my grinder and belt grinder. Anyway, I've set this up in here, and then I just went through and tacked it with my MIG gun as it's setting in here. And I'm trying to get it to be square and straight and everything, and in the center all at the same time. So this is the way I've decided to do that. It may not be absolutely perfect. I'm not welding very much because I don't want any welding splatter to get on this ram or any of my other stuff really, but it seems to be working pretty good. And this has lots of oil on it, so I don't think it's going to splatter too much, but I'm just putting some very little minor tacks on it, and so it'll hold it together until I can get it in the vise, and then I'll weld it up solid. And what this is going to be a tool holder to hold a stamp. I have a stamp somewhere. Here it is. This item's gonna hold this stamp. This has my name and my signature, or my name, my company, and my signature. And this is just gonna hold my stamp. And it's nothing but a big square piece. That's gonna be the pushing part, and then a piece of square tubing. And I'm gonna add a couple of pieces of filler material around it, and then put a bolt on it, thread it to put it in there. I'll show you what it looks like when we get done. But nothing to it, just scrap pieces I have laying around. But I'm going to weld this on here hard now, so I'm going to heat this section up some, and then we'll weld it on there good. I'm not going to get it too hot because I'm afraid it'll move. So I just put some heat into it so it's not ice cold. It's going to move till I get a few more tacks on it. Alright, just show you what I got this far. This is my stamp that I want to mount in this piece. And I've got my bolt, just like we had before. This is the top bolt. Top of the bolt. Welded it to just a square, well, rectangle piece of fairly thick steel. And then I have a piece of just square tubing or rectangle tubing. I did file, there's on your tubing there'll be a little place there where it's welded together. I did file on that some, didn't get it all the way off, but I got it most of it off. And then on these pieces, this is the only thing I had that was the right thickness. I had to round the corners. Because the corners of this tubing is round, and so it fits up in there better and the way I needed it to be. But anyway, I rounded the corners. And so now I have my stamp, and I have my 4 little pieces here that match up. And it's fairly tight, not super tight. I want it to come in and out like this side. Drill a hole that'll take this bolt and stick this on here and weld around the nut, and then that way I can have this bolt to squeeze this together so this doesn't move anymore. And the reason I'm not going to weld these in and put the bolt this direction, which is another possibility, is that I may want to use a different punch one day, a different stamp. And so I want these to be able to be removed and make sure that I can, you know, put something bigger in here if I have it. Got our hole. It's bigger than our bolt by a little bit, and that's what I wanted. I wanted this to be able to turn freely. If this was thicker, I'd have just tapped the metal, but this is only like 1/8 of an inch, and I guess that would probably work, but I wanted a little bit more to it in case I wanted to tighten on this some, or I don't know how loose it's going to be, so we'll see. But that's our deal. Before I weld the nut on here, this bolt, this nut, I'm going to clean all these welds up. It'll be easier to get them to them now. Alrighty, a quick update. I have welded on the bolt, the nut rather, onto the piece. I drilled a hole in this side, and I haven't cleaned it up yet, but we're just test fitting it. And I made me a little bar and put across the top of this. Just beat it out, heat it up, beat it out, forged a little thumb screw. It's probably too big. We'll see what it looks like. May have to cut it down. But it works, goes in there. So we're going to set this thing up. I have not welded these pieces in as yet. So we'll set it back up. Make sure it's going to function the way we think it should. Gotta turn these right. They have round corners on them. Only one corner though. Alright. Piece. Round corner. Round corner. Alright, and we'll just tighten that up. And that should be it. And right now that will work. That will work good. I have a little gap right there, but I don't think that's going to bother anything. If it does, I may put a little shim or something in there, but I don't think that's going to bother. If it bothers too much, I'll put another nut and another tightening apparatus on this side. Alright, we got about 3 of our tools more or less made. We've got this one that holds our stamps, and I just put a little spacer in here instead of my stamp. I don't want to leave my stamp out, get it, maybe tear it up. Also, this spacer is 1/4 of an inch. I've got some like letter and number stamps, like if I wanted to put a serial number on something or whatever. I think I could use this same thing. That's what I was going for, was something that had more than one purpose, but I think I could put like serial numbers or initials on stuff for other people other than me. So I think that's working very nicely. We've got it cleaned up mostly. I went ahead and just tack welded this washer on because the fly press needs that on these type of ends that we have. On the end that has the bolt, it doesn't come down square, so it wants to jam up in there. And to be honest, the first time I put that in there, I forgot that, and so I've just tack welded a washer on that, and I'll do the same on these other ones. Now the ones that are this end, this does come down square, and so you don't have to do that, and you could just leave your washer loose. If you wanted to add a washer, you know, you could, or you don't have to, I guess. But on the ones like this, certainly need to have the washer, or set it in a lathe and turn it down, which I don't have. And then this is our latest one. I haven't cleaned this one up yet, but it's a round, just a round bending bar, I guess. And we got to trim it off and clean up the welds. And I've added on these wings on it so that it's stronger, pushing down farther out. depending on what you're pushing, I guess just a solid bar there might work. And I cut my wings off just ever so slightly too short. I'd like them to come up and touch that nut, but it didn't quite get that. And then this one we've got cleaned up pretty good. And I didn't put wings on it, but I built up some weld on both sides. We'll see if that's enough. Gussets, I call them wings, but they're gussets. But we built up some weld on it, so maybe it'll hold to us. But it's just flat for like pushing bearings or whatever. And its washer is loose at this moment. We'll see how that works for us. I may tack on all the washers, because that would be ideal, I guess, but that means I got to buy more and more washers. But I have enough for what tools I have here. And then we've got 3 more blanks that we can make more tools. The next tool I'm going to make is going to be a round tool, more akin to this one for my power hammer. That's domed. It's not a circle. It's not a ball bearing dome. It's just domed. And I use this a whole lot making bowls and leaves and different things under my power hammer. So I'm going to make a tool that does this job under the fly press. Show you what we got so far. We've got 3 more stubs, 1 long one and 2 short ones. We're going to make 3 more tools. This is going to be one of the tools. I hadn't decided whether I put it on just the nut or the bolt top, or I might split this. What my original idea was, split that and let this sit down in here so it has a little more rigidity. I initially wanted it long, but I'm thinking about making another bottom jig to bend things in. I'll show you that one too, but I was thinking about making it match the width of this so my bottom jig will work for both of them. So think about cutting that off. And so that will be one, and we'll probably grind this to a point in the center so it's a sharp, this is a rounded shape if you want a round corner, and this would be a sharper corner. So we'll grind it to a point, a dull point. And then I want a tool to mash down like leaves and bowls and so forth. And so I've got a few pieces that I've cut out of this was an old blade off of a bush hog, and I used my plasma cutter by hand roughly and cut out some circles. And what I'm going to do is clean them up, of course, and then I'm going to weld them together so they have some thickness. And it depends on if I want a sharp, more of a half of a sphere, I'll put the little one on top. If I don't, and I just want to add some height to it to get it away from my ram, and then use one of these, I'll probably do that. That's probably what I'm looking at doing. And just round, by the time I get these cleaned up and rounded, we'll round this corner over and weld these two together. I think it'll be okay. And that'll give me plenty of mass to be pushing down with, in about the right size. To show you what I've been doing, I've got a hole I drill through this, and then I'm cutting 2 slots down with my grinder to make the center come loose. My hole ain't quite in the center of my bolt. It'd been better if it was dead center. It's nearly center, but not quite. Let's see, we're gonna see if we can get the whole thing above to come out. I need to cut down on that far side just a little bit more. I need to go sideways and filed it just a little bit. Just about there. We're almost to the bottom. hate to drive it in because I don't want this to spray. So we're going to keep eye on it a little bit. And now, just like I've been doing, I'll put this actually in the fly press with this against the bottom anvil, for a better word, so that this is parallel. This will be, you know, up in the fly press, the slick end, and then this will be parallel to hitting square down. And I'll put a couple tacks on it, then we'll weld this on good. But I think that'll do. It's not quite in the center, but it ain't off by much, maybe a 16th. That's all. We made this little block of wood with some holes drilled in it so we could put our top tools on without them flopping all over and being in the way. This is our last tool we're going to make in this series. These are stubs here that's not been a tool yet, but we'll use one of those for this. And what I've done is I've annealed this. Last night I come out and turned the forge on, stuck all this in there, got it good and red hot, and then I just cut the forge off. I've got a gas forge, so I just cut the forge off and I let it sit in there and cool off with the forge. So that's as soft as it can be. And now we're going to take and grind this up more or less smooth, clean off this forge scale so we can weld good, and then we'll weld these three pieces together and then weld it onto one of the stub ends here. And I'm going to tack all this up and I'll put it back in the forge and heat it up once I have it all cleaned up and tacked, and heat it up some, because this is big heavy steel and we're going to put good welds on it. So if you heat that up, it doesn't have to be glowing red or anything, but it needs to be heated up some so it's got some heat in it, so when you weld it's going to do right. Alright, here's our pieces cleaned up. Not perfectly round. I have a plasma cutter but not a computer controlled one, so I'm cutting freehand pretty good, but it's not going to be perfectly round. It's just got to be domed shaped. And I've cleaned up both sides and the edges, and then of course it's going to stack up something like that. And we'll twist these around and get as much even exposed edge around as we can. We may even cut a little bit more on them, or grind a little bit more on them, just to make it so we can weld all the way around, and then we'll grind that back off smooth. The weld actually grind a lot easier than this, but this is hardened steel. We've annealed it, but it's still crazy hard. Alright, we've got our piece kind of tacked up, arranged like we want it. We're going to stick it in the, since this is such a thick, heavy piece, we're going to stick it in the forge and heat it up some, and then we'll bring it out and finish our welds. But we'd like this to be a good solid weld, so we're going to definitely do that. Next, the three circles welded together, and straight off cooling. I didn't quench it or anything, I just let it cool naturally. And we're just going to start, and we're going to knock off the big bumps with the grinders, and then start to sand this up smooth, grind it up smooth, and round it some. Alright, that's what we got after our initial grinding. I ground it around this way with a hard grinding disc. And the three pieces I had were a little misshapen because they were tapered. And so I've added some more weld up here, and I've just marked with some chalk what's the highest point, and I'm going to work that down so that this becomes more of a bowl shape, upside down bowl shape. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. A few lumps and bumps is okay with me, because I usually make like leaves and different things. It's alright to be lumpy bumpy, but I'm going to get it fairly smooth and fairly round. Alright, I've grounded a few minutes with my hand hard disc grinder with the 4.5 inch grinder, and then I took it over to my belt grinder and just went over it lightly And what the belt grinder does, it's a flat platen on it, so it's going to show you your highs and lows. So all the dark that we're seeing are low places. Some of them are barely low, like that one, and some of them have pretty good little holes in them. So next step is I'm going to wire brush it up so it's clean, and then I'm going to weld over those low places and then regrind it, and do that several times, and it'll come out perfectly smooth. Alright, this is the second time I've welded, and the spots are getting smaller and less of them, and the ball is getting rounder and rounder. I've got a few that I still have to fill in, but a lot less than they were. And around the edge, I'll probably wait till last to hit that edge, but runs right around the edge is a few low places. But the working part of this is the top. And so that's what I'm working on the most. That's our third go with welding and then grinding it back. And you can see the holes are much smaller, little teeny ones now. And at this point, this tool is very much usable because the center of it's what's going to touch primarily, and that's perfectly good. Now we're going to work on the edge a little bit. And we roll it around to you. You can see there's some different low spots. The dark spots are the low spots. So we'll work on the edge just a little bit more. Alright, this is I think the fourth time I've welded and ground. And you can see the top is filled in nicely, hardly any spots on the top. I do have a few little extra parts around the edge. And I'll go back and fill those in. But I think that this tool is perfectly usable at this point. It's not going to, you don't have to fill that in. I'm just going to do it because it'll look better, and if I wanted to make something that was tall, I'd want to push down on those edges, and that's probably not ideal at this point. But I'll go back and I'll put a few more welds on that. Okay, we got our pile of top tools here that we made, and one bottom tool. This one I didn't show making, but it's just a ring, and this is actually a coil spring and welded onto a, I think this is either an inch or 3/4 square. It fit my anvil. I ground it down so it would fit my power hammer too, but it'll fit in this square hole that I have for my press. I may have to shorten it, or I may just stack something underneath this. Either way it'll work. But I made this tool for the to go in the top of the fly press and be able to push down and make bowls, or what I'm going to do with it is make leaves usually, or any kind of shape that you needed a depression. I guess you could even use it to straighten metal if you needed to straighten metal. I made me a little block of wood here. This is an extra blank for my top tools. This what we use, just the bolts, 1-inch bolt. I made a little dowel rod here to hold my washers. I'm going to use these washers as spacers. So my top tool ends, I don't know if y'all can see this, go almost to the top of the hole, which is not bad. I just don't want it to go to the top. But if we need it to come down just ever so slightly, and we don't want to move our stop up there for some reason, we can use these as spacers and stack them up, and it'll lower your top tool. We have a round bar welded onto a stop here, part of the bolt, and then wings on it, and that's useful if we want to make something with a round corner. And then we have basically the same type of tool, except it's got a point on it, an edge on it, kind of like an axe edge, and that would be used if we want to make a square corner or something with a tighter bend. And then we have just a flat, if you're going to mash bearings, press bearings in or out, or if you just want to mash something down, you could even use this one inside the circle, and it would still do the job. You just have to rotate your metal more. to get you more of a flat bend. And then this one, I just got a little blank in here right now, but this one is set up to put my name stamp, my trademark, and I set it up so that we can use the little numbers and letters like you would get little stamps that have little numbers and letters that are 1/4 inch square. That's why I got my little 1/4 inch blank in here. This rotates, of course. You can take your stamps in and out, and I think that'll work well. I've tried it on my trademark stamp and it seems to work good. And so this is our group of top tools. Now we'll make another video about some bottom tooling that these will all fit into. I hope you've enjoyed this video of us making top tools for our new fly press. If you have, please hit that like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.